Shalom. I'm Susan Hoogie of Messianic Morning Prayers, thanking you for choosing Messianic Lamb Radio as your resource for passionately learning everything you can about God and Messiah Yeshua.
Let it go, let the teardrops roll. Let it go, to the waterfall. Go when you're low. Hello and good day. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to my show. I'm Robin Gould, and I'm excited that you're here today. And I hope that you're ready to be encouraged and move forward a little bit even, because the future begins now. So let's get right into what we are going to talk about. I want to do a little bit of a series on comparison. So comparison being us comparing ourselves to others in many ways. And I think we do that in a lot more ways than we are even aware. And it's important to always be cognizant of when we're doing that, so that when we're interacting with people, we're present, we're there, and we're not future focused in a future us or in a past us. So I actually going to talk about one aspect of that with what we're going to study together today. So I'll just have at it here and we'll just get right into it. Now, as you know, I try not to wear glasses much because I do have a ring light to help how my camera is set up, but it does, so you get that a little bit. So I try not to wear my glasses, but you're going to have to deal with that ring light just a little bit here and there so I can actually read my notes and what I need to do. So what we're going to do is actually today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present something to you that's probably not the way you've ever had this topic presented. So that can be a little bit unique for people. They think, you know, someone's going to give me a different view I've never probably heard. It doesn't always mean it's wrong. So I always encourage people, if people have a little bit of a different lens, then that is okay. And if you're new to this program and you've never seen it before, actually, my specialty is attachment. So I always read the Torah through an attachment lens. So that's always going to be my focus, would be God the Father as our primary attachment figure. And so that's my lens. So when I read the Torah, I see a father. I see a loving father, a just loving father who, of course, does discipline and correct and shepherd and corral and all of the things that a very good father does. But that's my lens. So you're going to see something you might not be as familiar with. And so anyway, I'm just going to just start, and we're going to talk about, so last week we talked about miracles. You can go back and look at that. And I'll try to put it on my website, newcovenantpath.com. That's how you can find me. And there's contact information if you ever have feedback. And also I have a chat here. So if anyone is watching this live, let's get the chat so I can see it. Okay. Yeah, you can chat with me if you want. Apologize for the rings. But we're going to talk about Miriam, because last week when we did miracles, we talked about Moses, but I want to talk about Miriam, who is Moses' sister, and get into one of the comparison themes here. So there's a lot to it. I hope I can cover it in an hour. If I can't, we might split it up a little bit. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's start a little bit with the part of Miriam that she generally gets to be most known for. And that's just the basic scripture about Miriam. So I'm actually going to share the screen here. And we're going to look at this scripture here of Miriam. So let's just read what most people read about Miriam. So this is in Numbers 12, 1 through 15. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses. And this is dovetailing on what we had talked about last week with the miracles. You know, this is where they had passed through the Sea of Reeds, and now they're camped and drama is going down. So Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard this. Now the man Moses was very meek, more than all the people who were on the face of the earth. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tent of meeting. And all three of them came out. And the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. And he said, hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, clearly and not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous like snow. And Aaron turned toward Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said to Moses, oh, my Lord, do not punish us because we have done foolishly and have sinned. Let her not be as one dead whose flesh is half eaten away when he comes out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried out to the Lord, oh God, please heal her, please. But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be shamed 7 days? Let her be shut outside the camp 7 days, and after that she may be brought in again. So Miriam was shut outside the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out on the march till Miriam was brought in again. Okay. So that's what you hear a lot of when you hear Miriam. And so this story, in many ways, it's a true story. In many ways, it's disturbing to people. They're upset by what they're reading. They feel like Aaron was complaining too. Why is Miriam the center of attention here? And seems to be taking, you know, all the blame and the brunt. Patriarchy has a field day with this sort of translation. And it just seems brutal in ways, humiliating Miriam, and all of just a lot of different opinions that come up. So it's always been an interesting story to me. In the Bible, and if you're new to Torah, I want you to know, when you read the Bible, it's all going to be a matter of good translation. Now, I am certainly not saying that I am the best translator in the world, but I do know how to read, and I do know how to use my interlinear resources, and I do, I cannot speak well of my Hebrew. Unfortunately, I take Hebrew. I passed Hebrew enough to graduate with my degree, but I will say that I know people who speak Hebrew. So I'm pretty good in that area for resources. But some of the words here have what I would say a translator bias, which is where there might, and actually I can't say it's an intentional bias, but it would be a bias where a person would believe this is what's being said, and the words that are translated, where you could pick from a couple words, are actually selected and might push a meaning, right? Might kind of nudge a belief system. And that's a very important not to do. So hermeneutics and all the things where you're learning about words, and we have what's called the rule or the law of first mention. And it's the way a word is used in the beginning of the text is how we interpret it later. And anyway, that's just a lot that you probably know. But in case you're new, I just wanted to run that by you so that you are aware. But translations are important. So I'm going to take you through and show you a few things that you might not have known. So here, let's talk a little bit more about Miriam. So we have this scene. She's an adult and being apparently chastised. So we think, right? That's kind of the story. But let's go a little deeper. I want to talk a little bit more about Miriam. So let me grab my notes here. And I'm sorry about the ring. I don't mean that. I have to figure that out. I'm going to figure that out. So if you look in Exodus 15:20, you'll see that Miriam was a prophetess. So this is a woman of prophecy. And the sages talk a lot about Miriam. There's a lot to say. Some sages believe that Miriam and her mother were the midwives that were not killing the Hebrew babies when Pharaoh had commanded that all the Hebrew babies be killed on the birthing stool. So the midwives would be the ones that would kill these baby boys. And the two midwives refused to do it and then lied to Pharaoh and said, no, they were these women, these Hebrew women, these Jewish women, Israelite women, they're so strong that they just give birth so quickly before we get there. And so the sages would say, and this was a young Miriam, I think they say she was about 5. So they would say that Miriam and her mother were rewarded greatly. It's even said that that there's a dynasty factor here, where the Aaron, her brother, that there was honored with the priestly line, and David came from Miriam, and that would be the Davidic line. So anyway, there's a whole the rulership. So there's a lot that the sages say, suggesting that Miriam and her mother were the midwives. And interestingly too is, according to the sages, in the Midrash, it talks about how when Pharaoh was saying kill all the babies that are born, it was also they were going to take them and throw them into the Nile, and it like literally killed the ones that were 2 and under, because there was this competition, this new king, and it's just terrible to even think about that. But that was where, according to the sages, that a lot of men and wives had separated and had divorced, so they wouldn't have children or put away. And that isn't clear to me what particular form of separation they're talking about, if it was official or if it was just a put away. But they weren't coming together and making children, and which would make sense because there's a high chance that they'll have a boy and a 100% chance that child will be killed. And the sages talk about how Miriam was as a prophetess was given the knowledge that they would give birth to, that her father and mother should come together, because they were going to give birth to the figure, which is Moses, who would deliver the Israelites out of this bondage. And so she apparently told her father, and he listened to her and honored what she said, believed her. I mean, little girl, right? And they came together, conceived Moses, and of course, we know what happened then. And so that's very interesting, right? So Moses is a colorful figure. We've really enjoyed, we will continue to talk about Moses, but Miriam, what an amazing person and what a great story. So let's go on a little bit. Let me see if I can get a couple more things out of my notes here. Let's see. Okay, let's read a little bit more about what Miriam did. Let me share my screen here. Oh, I'm getting this technology a little better now. Okay, so here we go. This is Exodus 2:1-10. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took his wife, a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket and I don't know how to pronounce that word, bulrushia, roshesa, and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister, so here we're talking about Miriam, his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young woman, her servants, walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" So Miriam spoke to Pharaoh's daughter, offers to go and get a wet nurse. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother, Moses' mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me. I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. Okay, wow. So look what Miriam did. She prophesied to her father that Moses would be born and they were to come together and conceive him. And it happened. And then she stood by to make sure he'd be all right or see what would happen to him. I'm sure she was protective as a sister. And then when she then offers up a service, a favor to Pharaoh's daughter, "I'll go and fetch a wet nurse." And of course she goes and gets her mother, who's Moses' mother, and they even get paid. So Miriam has been pretty successful and a pretty amazing young girl, right? Very amazing story there. So let me see with my notes here where we are. And when the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became Pharaoh's daughter's son. And she named him Moses because she said, "I drew him out of the water." Okay. So, wow, that's pretty interesting. Let's see here. If we think about the important role that Miriam played in the life of Moses, in how he came about and how he was preserved, I mean, that's really no small thing. That's a very prominent figure in the Bible that had played such a pivotal role. That's a pivotal role for this girl, and she was very faithful to her calling and did well. So there you go. You have her. So now she was the focus of this chastisement, this alleged chastisement, and here was Aaron. Now, I'm going to just submit to you that Miriam was, according to what's recorded and documented, she was far more instrumental in her formative years as a child in Moses' life than Aaron did. Now, Aaron was instrumental in Moses' life, being, the one that would speak for him, and because Moses was not a good speaker, or however he words that. And you have Aaron, but not so much as a young boy. Really, that was Miriam's place. So let's look at what a presentation here that might be different for you. So just bear with me. Okay. So when God's talking, he's like, hear my words. He says, "I, the Lord, make myself known to Moses in a vision." So obviously Moses, very close to God. They have a very special relationship. And he says that Moses was very meek. Okay, so I want to actually share a screen here and show you this word here. Sorry if you have to see that ring. I'm going to figure this out, how to do this. So the word meek, as we see in here, it's used as humble. And it talks about, in Psalm 25, it's like the meek he can guide in judgment. Why? They're listening, right? You have to listen to be guided. And he teaches the humble in his way, right? And the Lord, the humble will hear. That's Psalm 34. So you see that he listens, which really, from an attachment perspective, suggests to me very clearly that they have an intimate connection. They have a very close, even mouth to mouth, as it says. So let's stop screen here. Okay, so let's get into this story and look at what really happened to Miriam. So he calls them over and wants to talk to all three of them, and he's upset because he says, "Why were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" Now, when God asks a question, you know he knows the answer. He wants you to think about the answer, right? The person to whom he asks the request is, think about why were you not afraid? And so we have to go into Miriam's world and try to figure this out. But there's some interesting things that I want to point out here. And I'm going to pull up my notes here and let's look at this. Because when the cloud was removed, Miriam was leprous, and it says like snow. So let's just take this line by line and look at a few things that we actually might have missed. And I'm going to show you. Okay, let me share screen again. Okay, so you see this? So here it says that when the cloud was removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous like snow, which people think is like this affliction. But I want you to look at the word here. The word is connected with what happened with Moses and his experience with his hand. I want you to look. The word here in Exodus 4 was Moses. Remember when he would put his hand in his top, on his bosom, it said, and then when he pulled it out, it would be white as snow. But then he would put it back in again. This was the second sign, remember? And then he'd pull it out and it wouldn't be white as snow anymore. So his hand was leprous like snow. And he was doing the will of the Father, showing them that God's power was working through them to show his power, right? Well, here's Miriam. It's in Numbers 12:10. Was leprous as white as snow. All right, that's interesting because the word leprous wasn't the type of a skin disease, right? This wasn't actually the word used for the skin disease. This was something different. And it wasn't necessarily anything unclean, but it was something to take notice of. So we already have a clue here that the Father wants her to take notice of something. Okay, interesting. Let's keep going. And it says Aaron turned toward Miriam, right? They faced each other, and yes, she was leprous. And then what does he say? He says, "Oh Lord, my Lord, do not punish her because we've done foolishly and have sinned. Let her not be one dead whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb." So that's interesting. Okay, so let's look at this word, dead. See, I have that in blue. Let her not be, and where do we find that word first? Well, we find it in Genesis 2. And that was about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So here's this word. Let her not be. What happens when you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? So there's a lot of talk about that. And I actually have a book eventually that will come out on this. But if you can remember about that book, about that part of the Bible, if you can go back into the garden and remember what the serpent said to Hava, to Eve, he says that if you eat of it, you will be like God, knowing good from evil. And Hava wanted to be like God. So if you are striving to be like God, what are you rejecting? You're rejecting the way he created you to be, which was to be a human. So so Hava is rejecting, she's rejecting her humanity. She's rejecting the form in which she was made at the pleasure of God. Now, God doesn't want us to be gods. He didn't want competition. And I'll tell you one thing, comparison and competition robs intimacy. There's no such thing as intimacy when there's competitiveness. So is that interesting? That's the first time you see that word. And Aaron's, don't let her be like that. So keep that clue in mind as we keep going. But that's an important piece to the puzzle here. Okay. So there's that word. Okay, now the word consumed. Don't let her be dead. Don't let her be dead as like one who is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb, talking about her appearance. Let's look at the word consumed. Where do we find that? Okay, here's the word consumed. I just like to, oops, I'm not sharing screen. Hold on. Let me do that. I see it and I think you see it. You are not seeing it. All right, there we go. There's the word. Let me make this a little bigger for you. There we go. Now, where do we find this word, consumed? Well, again, in Genesis 2:16. This is the tree of the garden. You may eat freely. You can take this in. You can take food in. So that's just interesting. It's another connection with that. I think that's interesting. And then it talks about the mother's womb. He talks about that when he comes out of his mother's womb, like a premature birth, right? And just something to know, rahamin is a noun. It can be also used as a verb. And it's have mercy when it's a verb, rahem, and it's the womb as a noun. So that's interesting. That makes you think of a birth, right? And I've read midrashic subject matter where they talk about when Moses puts his hand in and out, there's sort of like a birth aspect to that. And there's sort of a connection here with the mother's womb. So that's interesting. And if we had time, I would show you a few things why that was interesting to me and how that bridge is made. But let's keep going. All right. So now we're going to get into some translation issues. Okay. Now I'm going to show you this. Look at this. And Moses cried to the Lord, and we've already read this. Oh God, please heal her. But the Lord said to Moses. Okay. Now look at this. I don't want you to read that part. So I'm going to just look at this arrow. Moses says, oh God, please heal her. Please. Now you see that but is in red. Do you know why I have that in red? Because it's not there in the text. This was added by the translators, but it implies the way we are to think about it when it doesn't say that. So here we go. We're getting into some meaty stuff. Ready? Please heal her. The Lord says to Moses. Now here's where we get into like, well, her father should have spit in her face, or if her father spit in her face, why don't I do the same thing? Right? This is not exactly at all what he's saying. The Lord said to Moses, if her father had spit in her face, see what I did? See what I have there? She should not be shamed 7 days. Now look at the, here I have in red. Do you see the question mark? You know why? There's no punctuation in the Bible. That was added by the translators. So if I'm going to read this, it's Moses cries to the Lord, oh God, please heal her. And God says to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not be shamed 7 days. Now let's get into the father before I make my point here in blue. Ready? Now remember, she approached her earthly father and according to the sages and said, come back together. You will give birth to the one who will deliver Israel out of bondage. And the father listened to his child, to his daughter. He knew she was a prophetess. He did not spit in her face. So that didn't happen. And the Lord here isn't putting himself into alignment with the idea of this hypothetical shaming situation. If we actually read it with the facts and what we know about Miriam and what we know about the father, it says, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not be shamed 7 days. Well, neither should she be shamed that I speak to Moses differently than to her. I added that. I know you're not supposed to add, but I was just trying to paraphrase what the point would be there. So then he says, let's go back to share screen. I keep thinking you can see what I can see. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. So let her be shut outside the camp 7 days, and after that she may be brought in again. So Miriam was shut outside the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out march till Miriam was brought in. It looks like everybody's suffering, right? They have to wait. She's shamed. She's locked out, not allowed near people. It's time to punish Miriam. So the word is but is added by the translators. Okay, so now, if you look at this, this is how it should read. If we actually, and I actually show you, see the word there? 7 she be shamed would not. That's how Hebrew is, to the store I will go. That's kind of how it reads and is spoken. The Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not be shamed 7 days. So prophecy is not to be shamed. It is to be embraced. So her father didn't spit in her face and shame her 7 days. And if he had spit in her face, even then, because she was prophesying what he said, there should be no shame. It's sort of that turn the other cheek. We'll get into that sometime too. There's no way anyone can shame you in the righteousness that God gives you as you walk in his ways. There's no shame for you. Your identity doesn't come from other people, so they don't have the power to remove your identity, your value, your worthiness. That's not given to you by you, and it's nothing you can take from yourself or anyone else. That is all the Creator. So let's keep going. So let's read it as it's written. The Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not be shamed 7 days, which was a thing, being set out, you would be shamed. So the question is, because Moses says, Father, heal her. Lord, heal her. And so what would this healing intervention be? Well, here's what he says. Let her be shut outside the camp 7 days. I'm not going to shame her. Let's shut her outside the camp so she may, and after that, she may be brought in again. So she's shut outside the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out on the march until Miriam was brought in again. So did God heal her? Shut her out? How is that healing her? Teaching her a lesson? Making her feel humiliated? Well, the Father has his perfection. He has his ways, but I want to show you something. I want you to look out at this word. So I put it here in the interlinear so you can see this. I'll make it a little larger if that helps. And let's see where we find this word. I want to show you. We find it in Genesis 2, and it's when the Father had closed Adam's flesh after removing woman, as he repaired Adam's body from this removal, because he had to cut the flesh. And this is how he repaired. That was the word. He closed, he repaired their flesh. We also see it in Genesis 7:16. And it says that this is Noah, right? The Lord closed the door behind him. Noah didn't close it. The Father closed it. He shut him in. He protected him. He spared him. And then we see it in Genesis 19. And this is where Lot went in the house and shut the door behind him because they had the raging crowds. This is a barrier, a protection, creating a barrier so that what's tender inside isn't destroyed. It's protected. That's very important. So we read this differently now. When we know where these words are found, what do they mean? But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not be shamed 7 days. Let her be shut outside the camp 7 days. And after that, she may be brought in again. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is not a question, right? This is a statement. So here's the statement, and this is my paraphrase. This is Robin speaking what I believe is being said. The statement is, yes, Moses and Aaron, I will heal her, because they both appealed for her. If her earthly father had spit in her face and despised the life-giving prophecy I gave her about Moses, she should still not be ashamed. There's no shame in prophecy. In this event here, though, she is not prophesying, but she has assigned her identity to her works and value to status. So I'm going to heal her by separating her for a complete week so I can restore her. Okay. That's just what I'm saying. So we know that Miriam was a very instrumental figure in Moses' life. We've already explored that. And it goes without saying that she was very important and very deliberate in her actions, and her input made a big difference. So Miriam's a human being, just like I am and just like you are. And we talk about this, that the people in the Bible are just like the people today. Not with, their cultural differences notwithstanding, people are people. People have the same needs, inclinations, desires, fears. This is how people are. And Miriam is just like you and just like me. And it's not difficult when you are given important things to do and you do them and it's successful and it bears amazing fruit. You know what? It's not difficult to start plugging our identity into that. It's not hard to do that. It's very easy to start thinking, I did well. That makes me a good person. That makes me worthy of love. This makes me important. But the Father is so clear when you look at the week of creation and when you get to day 6 and he talks about how he made man, and man was very good. Very, very good. They hadn't even done a thing yet. And the first thing they were asked to do was to have a Sabbath. If that's not a message that you can't earn the love of the Father, I don't know what is. She was good because the Father made her good. She didn't make herself good. But that doesn't mean she isn't good. The Father made her. She is fearfully and wonderfully made. And there's nothing she can do to add to that value. And there's nothing she can do to detract. Because when you're created by the Almighty God, you are valuable. He doesn't make things that are not valuable. Very important concept. And I will hammer this all the time. So he's saying that there's no shame for her. But she was starting to sink. I believe what he's saying is she was starting to want to have input. Like she and Aaron. But Aaron was fighting for Miriam because he knew, I think, yes, Miriam has always been very important in Moses' lives and the way that things are functioning. And if it wasn't for her, Moses wouldn't even be here. But here he is. So you have Miriam. She's questioning his marriage to the Cushite woman. And there's a lot of debate about who this woman is. Was it his actual wife, Zipporah, already? Was a Midianite and is now being called a Cushite. There's actually a lot of midrashic topic where this was a station thing that he felt like that they were like that. This is not above or below the station you are. This is above or below your station, which is just another false way to look at people of a station, right? And then she wanted input. She wanted to be like, what? God only talks through him? Doesn't he? He's talked through me. What? Interesting. And the Father knew to explain to Miriam and to Aaron, I speak to Moses differently. Don't compare your relationship with me to his relationship with me. And he even explains himself a little bit. The God of the universe, the creator of the universe, explains himself a little bit. Moses is meek. He hears me. I appear to him in very, very frank and pragmatic ways because he's no guile in him. Don't compare. You're different. You're not Moses. You're Miriam. Just be Miriam. But maybe Miriam got sucked into her works, the things she did, which were pleasing to the Lord. But this isn't pleasing. And I personally, in psychology, we call it the false self. The ways that we cover up all of the places inside of us that just don't feel worthy or good or whatever. What do? We create a false self. Like we act in a false way, not in our true way. Our true self knows that we have purpose and we have love and we have comfort and we have meaning and we are important. We have a divine purpose and calling, and we are safe. We're with the Father, right? Our true self knows this. The false self is behaviorally challenging, right? It's going to challenge that all that love and wholesome wholeness, right? That wholesome wholeness that we have in our true self. What is the false self be that Miriam would have? Would be if I did important things and that makes me special. So then she sees Moses directly with the Father, and she doesn't even have any input. She might not agree what he did. She is jealous of how, or combative about how, he's communicating with the Father, and he's the one now that was the messenger. She was the messenger. So that could be affecting her. Well, when you find this in your life, when I find this in my life, when I start feeling the need to perform or achieve or overachieve or please people and get approval, to seek for approval, earn approval in this way, it becomes a job, right? And that isn't what the true self is just God's creation operating in your calling, and you're just important and loved because you were born, because the Creator made you. That's your claim to fame here. And maybe Miriam was forgetting her identity, and she was slipping into works. She was slipping into a false identity. I'm good because of the stuff I do. And how awesome was that? There's stories written about me. The sages will talk about me. I'm important. And the Father's like, you are important, but not for those reasons. So that's the lens through which I see this. And I just want to share this with you because I think the words and the way it's written and what the history is here bears it out. That's my opinion. So let's go on a little bit. And I got a few more notes here. Okay. So in this case here, we're not just rethinking the understanding of Miriam. We're actually rethinking the portrayal of God here. Because the big thing here from an attachment perspective is Miriam's like a beloved daughter of God, as all women are, beloved daughters of God, right? Beloved. And Miriam had really listened to God and done great things. And he's dealing with her harshly, but not Aaron. So sometimes people will assign a gender issue here. I don't believe that's it at all. I believe this was territorial responsibility. The more you're given, the more is expected. The easier it is to be puffed up and big and important, right? This big head that can't fit through that smaller gate, right? This big added on. I add on to myself with all of my accomplishments, right? That makes you big. And we're supposed to be small because God's enough. We don't have to be everything. He's everything. But let me read this to you because I think this is interesting. I got this from the Canadian Theological Review. This was done in 2014. I just want to read a little bit here. It talks about the leprous as snow, because I want to return to that for 1 second. Moses has this encounter with the Father in Exodus, and it's the second of the 3 signs, as we know, and I'm just kind of reading a couple words here. And it's demonstrating that he truly represents the God of Israel. So Miriam, in her state of complaining, still represents the God of Israel because she is his and made in his image, right? Just like you. But here's what's interesting. It says that Moses, unlike his fellow Israelites at this stage, he shows that he can endure this face-to-face encounter. And that description the second scene, like, actually, let me say this first. That second sign is often seen as a demonstration of divine judgment, good on behalf of the Israelites, not as good to the Egyptians. But when you read this as leprous, the word that's used here isn't the word for the unclean, diseased person. This is more of this white as snow idea, which suggests a positive significance that distinguishes it from the other word for white, which would be the skin and the hair, or a diseased skin. But this is more of like you are significant. So it doesn't mean it's even negative. So sometimes, have you ever been dealing with your child or a little child that you care about or love, or a friend, and you can see them, they're operating in this, they just feel like they need to please or whatever that is, and your heart goes out to them because you're like, okay, listen, you are loved. You are significant. So to me, it doesn't seem like a far stretch that he would demonstrate like Moses when he had his hand in there. Do you think the Father is going to afflict the body of Moses to show the Israelites that he's actually, to show the Egyptians that he is protecting the Israelites? That never made sense to me. Now I understand this. He's showing, I'm showing you how significant that my hand, Moses is my hand here, white as snow. It's in snow in the Bible, even when you read through it, it's like a sign of refreshing, white as snow. You'll find there's references. I think I have them in my notes, and I'll share a screen and show you, because I had so much more that I wanted to talk about, but we can't do it all in an hour. But that's interesting, right? So we would say, you are important. The Father isn't going to demonstrate in front of Pharaoh how important this man is by giving him a disease, right? But he's going to show him, my hand is all over this, white as snow. So sometimes when we see people spiraling into this bad false self, right? Spiraling in there, our desire isn't to kick them in the face and shun them so that they'll be punished. We express love. We say, don't think you have to do this to please me. I'm in, right? I'm with you. That's what I would do with my children. If they're just striving to impress me and I can see that they're having anxiety and the best part of them isn't really coming out, say, listen, calm down. I'm here. Don't just pause with all that. Stop. Mom loves you. You don't need to do that. And in fact, don't do that. Trust me that my love is enough. You're important. So just something to think about. So let's go in, look, I reframe that to something positive. And let's look here. So in my notes here, I have Miriam was not afflicted with disease. She was, like Moses' hand, transformed like snow by none of her own actions. Just like the Father did, Moses didn't make his hand that way. The Father did. So by none of her own actions, just the power of God. So she could see her identity as special to God too, like Moses, but not because of what she does, but because of who she is. Very important lesson. We all need to learn all the time. So if I'm going to do this in a paraphrase, let me go into paraphrase now. You ready? I'm going to paraphrase this. This is Robin Gould speaking. I'm not reading scripture. I'm reading my interpretation of scripture according to the way that I want to verbalize this to communicate the point I think it's making. So make sure we clear that up, because we read it several times verbatim is what I think this was ESV translation. So let's here's Numbers 12, 1 through 15, paraphrased. Moses and Aaron, after we actually went through all of these different words, her being shut in. Okay, actually, I didn't even cover that really enough. So before I read this. So when he removes her from the camp for 7 days. And the word is always used for sealing, protecting, repairing, right? It's a barrier from bad things. So from my perspective, if I'm a father, now I'm not equating myself to the creator of the universe and he would do what I would do. What I'm saying is I can see how parenthood is designed after his perfection, because this is what we should do as parents. So let's not mix that up. So he takes his daughter and says, yes, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to take you away from this group that Moses is called to lead. And you're feeling like you need to have input so that you mean something. You need some time away. So I've made you significant, looking to you understand this is my work, not yours. And he separates her for a whole week, complete week. So the number 7, a lot of people believe this is the number significant of completion. It would take a week. He's not going to finish until it's done. So he takes her away. It doesn't say she grieved and writhed and mourned and he was beaten. She was sealed up in this ark with the tumultuous water around her, but she's sealed in, right? Her insides are getting protected and repaired. That's the word. And he's taking the time he needs to restore his daughter, to protect her from her own failings, as to understanding her true identity in Yeshua, who is at the foundation of the world, all salvation. So her identity, she was challenged in understanding who she was. And he says, you're like snow. You're significant. It's my work, not yours. And I'm going to take you away to complete you so you can get back to your identity. And then it says they waited for her and they didn't leave without her. And I even like the part where Aaron turns to Miriam face to face. He turns toward her. The Bible just doesn't just say extra sentences for no reason. Single word is significant. He turns toward her. It is not, we don't turn away from people to show them how to be better people. We don't point to goodness from the curb. We are there for people. We go toward them face to face. We know what the other person's going through on some level because it's hard to live, right? So now that we've discussed the words that were used, and the connotation changes, doesn't it? That this wasn't a woman being humiliated, and this wasn't about gender bashing. This was a specific need this woman had based on her history and her role in history. So let's see. Here's my paraphrase. Miriam and Aaron tried to dominate Moses with their input, and they compared their roles against Moses' role. And they compared the way God communicated with Moses against how he communicated with them, asserting their importance. And the Lord heard it. Moses trusted and listened to God more than all people who were on the face of the earth. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, come out, you three, and meet with me separately, where I can be closer to you while I speak. And the 3 of them came out, and the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud. That's where heaven and earth would be. And stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam. So these were the 2. And they both came forward, and he said, listen to what I am saying. Moses has no guile, no pretense, no false self. So I can speak to him directly, and he will hear me. That's not the same for everyone else. What prevented you from knowing your own role and to embrace that pure system that just produced wonders of rescue? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam's appearance demonstrated the work of God like snow. And Aaron turned toward Miriam, and behold, she was in a state of transition. And Aaron said to Moses, oh, my Lord, do not punish her, because we've done foolishly and have sinned. So he sees there is a change. Let her not be as one who ate from the tree, whose flesh is defiled by trying to be you, ejected from mercy. And Moses cried to the Lord, please heal her, please. The Lord assured Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, she should not even be shamed then 7 days. Prophecy is my doing and should never be shamed. This event, however, is not prophecy for Miriam. She is trying to be me. Miriam has forgotten her true identity outside of the feeling of being important. Let her be protected and transformed alone with me for 7 days, and then gathered and accepted always in this tender state after I have healed her. For how diligent am I as a father? After that, she may be brought in again. So Miriam was sealed safely outside the camp 7 days, and the people waited for her. What do you think about that? That's kind of different than what we have always read. And my goal isn't to just say, let me find something in the Bible and give people a different view of it so it can be interesting. That's never going to be my goal. That might be what I can accomplish here and there because I read the Bible through an attachment lens. I'm not looking for a bad father. I am always looking for the Redeemer, for the God who restores. Now, I want to make something very clear because I have actually heard people say, Robin, you're just too grace-oriented. And I actually don't think that's an insult, but I want to say this. It is very important that we heed and obey the commands of God. He gives us his law, and we are to follow it. And when we don't, let me tell you, he's created the universe. He has created this world, and he knows how it works, and he tells us how it works. And when we don't follow it, we walk against every word he's spoken. So there's chaos in our lives when we don't obey. The Father does correct us. He disciplines us. We are to walk in holiness and to be set apart. So I don't want anyone to ever think that I'm going through the Bible and trying to reframe everything. I think what has happened is, as the Bible was translated, people had such a like a punishing view, such a penalizing view, exclusively penalizing of God, that there was a translator bias toward that edge. So in other words, these were biased implementations that sort of just became the narrative, the de facto narrative, because it's just repeated so much. But that's not really what's in the text. And it also isn't demonstrative of a parent, a good parent. And the Father is a good parent. He is not a weak, insecure God. Jealous means passionate. He's a jealous God. He's a passionate God. Because he will seek you out because he loves you. And we are his vessels of courtship. So we can get out there with the good news, right? But in systems where people want to control other people and they use the Bible as their tool, it's really nice if you can curate that God as a mean, terrible, wrath God and instill fear, because fear is a great way to control people. And that is not what God wants. We don't control each other. We encourage each other. We can edify each other and help each other. It's always good to help friends who are spiraling in their false self, to call them out on that in a loving way. You don't need to impress me. I am your friend. I am here for you. That's calling somebody out, but not shaming them. And watch them flower when love, right? We are created for connection. And so I don't want you to get the wrong impression that I'm taking this story and taking it kind of word by word and doing hermeneutics with it, and I'm finding a different picture than you might be used to. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong just because you've not seen it. I'm not saying I'm right or I know everything, but from my perspective, from the words I'm reading, where I see them in the Bible, what they're attached to, and what I understand about the way parents are called to be, it makes sense what I'm saying. That the Father is the restoring Father. He is the restoring God. He doesn't tear down to build up in the way like maybe the military might, where you're replaced with this false person. This is the Father always leading us back, shepherding us back to the garden, to the place where we had the identity. We were not ashamed, and that word is confounded. We weren't confused about who we were until we tried to be like him And then we tried to not be a person anymore, not be a human. We thought we'll be like God. We'll be like God. But you know what? You can't take on that role. You don't know the difference. You don't know good from evil. You don't know every single person and everything they've ever been through and how they're You're not the judge. And it's a good thing. I don't want to be my own judge. I'm hard on myself. Maybe I can be hard on other people too. But the God of the universe who made me and knows every single thing about me, he can be my judge. He will be fair and he will be loving. And he knows how to deal with me. So when Eve tried to know the difference between good and evil, what was she trying to do? She's trying to be the judge. She's trying to say, I can do what God does. And do you know what happens when you think you're God? You die. You will die because you will enter into things you are not capable to do. You ever see that movie, Bruce Almighty? We cannot handle running the system here. That's territory that is only for the Father. And it's a blessing to make sure you're never trying to take that baton from him. Because number one, he's never handing it to you. And number two, if he did, you couldn't hack it. Not for a minute. You try to think you know better than God or are equal to God or you will die. So many things in your life will die. Your relationships will die. Your connections with other people, dead. Your future, gone. You know why? Because you are going to be running ahead of God. You're going to be thinking you know all the things and you don't. And then you're not what Moses is. Listening, hearing. That's what makes us special, is something you can't give yourself. Moses didn't even give that to himself. God gave it to him. He did embrace it though. And Miriam, God's precious daughter, Miriam, she herself started to lose her identity. She started to sink into her works and think she had to earn it, or that she was comparing herself. Moses seems like he's more important. There's times that you are going to rise and there's times you're going to step back and watch someone else rise. Celebrate them, celebrate God, right? So we've gone a little over, I apologize. I think it's hard to fit this into an hour, and we went over 1 minute and 6 seconds. So I hope you enjoyed this today. I think it was a unique message that might be maybe something you can follow up yourself and look into those words and go into the interlinear and put things together and not read it so much with this translator bias, but maybe read it through the lens of attachment, through how is the Father who says he's going to restore all things, how is he doing it through Miriam? What's he telling me through what's happening with Miriam? Well, he's telling you a lot, I think. And I think that this is the way that we learn. And it's okay to challenge as long as our point isn't just a challenge for the sake of challenging. But for the sake of understanding, I've gone deeper into this story. And of course, I have 2 more hours to go. If we ever, maybe we'll do a series more on Miriam and different things about Miriam, because she's an interesting figure. She's a very interesting biblical figure, and she's a woman. And I really think that this is a great message that we can embrace and learn from. So I am so grateful that you sat through this time with me and we enjoyed this time together. And think about Miriam, think about yourself. And you know what? You don't need to compare yourself to a former you. And you don't have to compare yourself to another person and what they're doing and how they're being used by God. Because let me tell you something, there's only one you. And you can do it better than anybody else. But be authentic. And we're going to keep on our series, and next week we'll talk more about comparison. But I want you to understand that no matter who you are, period, God loves you. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you go out and you toss goodness around like it's confetti, because you can, because that's part of the good news. So remember, the future begins now. So if anything has moved you, nudged you forward, blessed be the name. The future begins now. So I just really want to thank you for joining me and being a part of today. And we shall meet again next week. And I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.